When you think about great chapters in Kengan, I think this will be one many are going to remember. Chapter 139 was just absolute greatness. We got a conclusion regarding the Tarashi and Nicholas situation, updates on Akoya, ZG running into some special individuals we're all been waiting to see actually fight, and then of course Edward Wu vs Ryan, or I should say the Wu vs Kure war. Absolute greatness all around. Before beginning, make sure to leave a like to support your boy and make sure you're subscribed for more Kengan content. Hope you enjoy, let's begin. Title of the chapter, 3-on-1, of course referring to what happened to Kure Ryan. We see Tarashi breaking into the area where Nicholas is currently getting medical attention, slapping these bodyguards with his vibration hand. Tarashi do be looking a lot more cool now than what he was in his fight against Okubo. Maybe Tarashi redemption potentially, but as he walks in we see that Nicholas is awake, demonstrating his coping mechanism regarding what happened with his friend the real Nicholas. If you don't know, we recently got the character profile for Nicholas Urbana and the real Nicholas, with it revealing to us due to the scope of how Gene viewed the real Nicholas, he couldn't fathom the reality of the situation, in turn becoming Nicholas himself, while also being Gene, kinda fusing the personalities together. And we kind of see them separating here, which of course makes Tarashi realize that this isn't Nicholas, as such this isn't the person he has been hired to kill. As such he decides to walk away and we get a quick glimpse of Nicholas's mental state in the last panels here. So that situation is fully concluded now. I do find it a little bit disappointing. I would have much preferred Tarashi to actually go for the kill and get stopped by someone else and get into a fight to see what Tarashi's killing moves potentially are like. Regardless, situation's over. I'm glad we don't have to worry about seeing that ever again. From there, we cut to Akoya, who's in his cell, thinking about Nicholas and Lolong, thinking, I'm not strong enough to enact justice. So Akoya training arc, you would have thought he would have been training over the 2 years quite a bit, but still he wants to get stronger for his justice. I don't think Akoya's gonna last very long. I'm still on the train that Akoya's going to die. We'll see what happens, but maybe when he breaks out of this prison and begins fighting during the whole worm insanity, we'll see, some redemption for him perhaps, but who knows. Then we get some absolute hype. We have ZG absolutely sprinting away from the, monsters, of course, the Kure and Wu. And as he's sprinting in the hallways, he gets grabbed by someone. Someone, very skilled with, his hands. He says, hey there, I hear you met my student. So of course, the person Koichi and Joji wanted to run into is right here, and easily, without any effort, Koichi has dislocated ZG's wrist. With his crazy face. If you don't know, Koichi is an absolute madman who enjoys breaking people's bones, and this is kind of what he's like, including some potential erections and other stuff in this situation. The people who have read Fist of the Seeker know all about that, but it's finally pretty cool to see the crazy Koichi currently in Kengan. We also have Joji here saying, I'll handle the punching and kicking. At this point, you just gotta feel bad for ZG. Of course, I hope they actually end up killing him and that ZG doesn't make it out of this arc. That's what I'm praying for, but, he is, the definition of a worm, so him surviving could very well be the case, but I do hope they give him the beating of his life, and most likely, ZG will receive that. Now it's time for the absolute peak of this chapter. We see Edward just having a smoke, chilling, cutting to Ryan face down on the floor in a pool of blood. When I saw this panel in my reaction, I was freaking out. I thought Ryan just got off screen, and we see Edward chilling there saying, better go to sleep, kiddo. By the time you wake up, the world would have changed. The whole world they're willing to change. So, whatever the worm's doing right now, it is pretty major. And we see 2 other Wu members behind him, the Fist-Breaking King and the King of Brutality. So our boy Ryan really got jumped in a 3v1. It's very clear that Edward didn't just fight Ryan alone here before, the rest of the chapter, with the Solomon Wu guy saying, can you believe that Alan tripped over a pebble like this? So Ryan really got jumped by 3 members. They also talk about Alan being the weakest among us, but not in a literal way. They're more so talking about, oh yeah, because he died, he must be the weakest or something like that. But based on stuff we see later in the chapter, Alan most likely is weaker than Solomon and this other dude. So regardless, I thought Ryan was done when I was initially reading it, but no, of course, our boy Ryan is back up. He tries attacking as they walk away. One of them kicks back, one of them smashes into Ryan. Ryan goes for an eye jab, but the other guy is able to grab Ryan and they begin beating on him, with Edward explaining the whole Wu Hei situation going on with his branch of the Wu clan. He says that these guys are my spares and that he possesses the ego of Wu Hei, with it theoretically being possible to use the Hoosh thing on the entire clan to mass produce Wu Heis, but they didn't do that due to the chances of anarchy getting increased, as Wu Hei's personality doesn't like serving anyone else. So Edward did this with 4 other members. We have Alan Wu, these other 2, and 1 dude we haven't seen. With Edward saying, meaning there are 5 of me in the Westwood faction. I'm not gonna lie, this whole Wu Hei personality situation thing is quite strange, but I do think Edward is very clearly the leader. But my theory regarding this other spare that we saw here is that maybe it's someone who looks exactly like Edward would, so it's kinda more so a clone rather than a spare like these other guys. They're super big like Edward, but they clearly look different. Maybe this other person looks exactly like Edward. That could be pretty crazy, but still I think the other person will play an important role later on. Cutting back to the fight, so we have them beating on Ryan and Ryan pulling out his removal to push the other 2 back. They also enter the removal, and we see that Ryan in his removal is dealing with these other 2 quite well, resulting in Edward needing to step in with this pretty insane kick. He does send Ryan flying with this kick here, demonstrating again that he is indeed much stronger than these other 2 and is the true leader. He also mentions that they're in perfect sync. We're all me after all. So again, the whole spare situation all kind of being one person. That's why I do think the person that wasn't shown yet may be someone who looks exactly like Edward. So there's 2 Edwards in the group. But that's just my current theory / prediction. Then we get some very villainous like things from Edward. With Kengan as a whole not having too many villains, yes, they have quite a bit of antagonists, but villains are very limited. So far, I would say the big villains in the series is Edward and the Tiger Nico currently, with Edward portraying this villain persona quite well here, with him laughing saying, "You're mad, aren't you? You think it's unfair, don't you? You're goddamn right it is. We're going to be unfair and fight you 3-on-1. Of course, people are going to be saying Edward's just a pussy, but it's more so he's smart. Not every character in Kengan is this crazy dude who just loves fighting for his whole life. Edward has a plan, and that is to destroy the Kure clan. He wants to kill them all. So why risk fighting Kure Ryan on a 1-on-1 where he could get potentially injured quite a bit, especially after seeing Ryan absolutely destroy one of his spares? So Edward really is just being smart and truly being the villain. And then, without any doubt, as soon as Edward says 3-on-1, we have our boy, the mighty demon Kure Irio, coming from behind and killing one of Eddie's spares with this blade, I believe. Absolute legendary. And then the line, make that 2-on-2. Irio just became goated once again. Of course, I've been saying this ever since my prediction video like a few months ago. I do think Irio is going to die during this arc, and him already arriving to the fight I think solidifies that even more. Considering that we learned there's one more spare of Edward, I do think that spare will be the one to actually catch Irio off guard and kill him. So my prediction for the continuation of this fight is Edward will be fighting Kure Ryan, Irio will be fighting one of the other spares, actually defeating with some crazy OP Kure clan technique we haven't seen before. But then Irio will be jumped from behind by the remaining spare of Edward, who in my opinion looks exactly like Edward. And then we have Ryan actually kill the Edward he's fighting, and then the remaining Edward versus the somewhat injured Kure Ryan. That's my theory regarding that. But do take note, even though Ryan has taken a beating so far, he's not really that injured. Like, he's taken damage equivalent to this from like Mokinchi, or definitely like less injuries than what he's received from Omen in round 2. So Ryan is still very fine, and he is of course a monster. Thus, anyone who has called Ryan a jobber in the comments already, just hold this L, and people complaining about Edward being a pussy also take this L. But yeah, that is my video for this week's Kengan chapter. Amazing. I'll probably say a 9 out of 10 top tier and a very promising start to this next crazy arc. Also, a lot of people thought the tragedy thing mentioned last chapter was referring to something that was going to happen the next chapter. I think tragedy is going to refer to everything that's going to happen in the upcoming arc with multiple character deaths in my opinion, not, the next chapter specifically. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Leave a like. If you haven't already, make sure to follow my Twitter. Join the Discord to talk more about Kengan greatness. And as always, shout out to these people who support the channel via the Patreon. But yep, that's it guys. Peace.